Hi everyone, I'm Ryan. It's a weekend and I'm in my garage. It's also not raining for the first time in weeks, so I've got a few things I'd like to try and get done today. Firstly, my intention this week was to work on the front end. So I've got this mocked up 21-inch front wheel. It's just a generic front wheel off of Chinese bike, I think. And this axle doesn't fit, so the bearings are all wrong. There's a load of movement on the wheel. But I think I've got the bearings now arrived that should take up that slack and compensate. So hopefully I can get the front wheel sorted today, then I can begin to think about the brake. However, much to my surprise, the rear wheel came back built much quicker than I was originally quoted. So this is it back, new rims, new spoke, obviously original hub, and the offset is much further towards the sprocket. So that's hopefully going to fit on the rear axle now, and it's going to look like that's resolved my biggest headache that I wasn't sure how I could overcome. So fingers crossed that will work. So if I can get the front wheel axle sorted, if I can do a test fit of this and just visually check it looks correct. I don't have a tyre yet, but hopefully we can make progress on that. So that being said, let's get on with this front wheel. Okay, so starting with this front wheel, clearly it was never designed for this bike, and it just doesn't fit. So I mean, I've thrown it in. It's on an axle which is too narrow for the bearings, so you've got what looks like the worst wheel bearings in the world at the moment. But it does physically go between the forks, so I'm confident I can make this work. So what I have done is I've measured the thickness of the axle, I've measured the inner diameter of the wheel, and I've ordered a set of bearings which I think will go in the wheel and then fit the axle. So let's start by just taking it apart. Let's try the bearings on the axle first and see how they fit and any movement. And then I've got to try and get them in the wheel. So yeah, let's get going. So if you've been watching any of my series so far, you will know I am definitely no professional. I'm just a guy trying to learn what to do. And this is me now demonstrating that I've cocked up. So, last week I measured the axle that was in there, and I measured it at 11mm, and I needed 35mm outers. So I ordered these bearings, and they dutifully arrived. And I was going to smugly demonstrate to you how snugly they fit on the axle. And I've taken the bearings, and I've taken the axle, and they don't fit. They do not fit on this axle. And I thought to myself, well, hold on a minute, that doesn't make sense. So let's just get my calipers out. There you go. Bearings are 11mm. So I thought, well, if these are 11mm, why don't they fit the axle? Well, the reason they don't fit the axle is because if I measure it again now, I'm getting 11.8. How did I get that wrong? How did I manage to measure this axle with these calipers and get 11mm when I need 11.8? That is frustrating. That is, I don't know how I did it. Clearly my mistake. I've clearly cocked up. So, no, I won't be asking for a refund from the supplier of these. That would be ethically unfair. I know I could. Maybe they'll come in useful in the future. Or if anyone needs any bearings with 11mm centres, let me know. So that's going to put the front end on hold for a week, and I'll throw it back together with the wrong bearings in it, and we'll move to the back, and hopefully a quick test fit of the rear wheel will look more successful. Bugger. Okay, so I've checked and double checked. I need bearings with an inside diameter of 12 millimeters, but the outside I'm not 100% sure on. So I'm going to try and remove these original bearings. I'm measuring them, what seems to be just under 35, but I don't want to get them out and be as accurate as I can possibly be. So let me try and find a way of knocking these out. Find a bar or something that can go through the back of the wheel and just catch on the inside of the bearing and just knock it through. So yeah, wish me luck with that. There you go. I win. A little bit of effort required. Right, we now have the bearing and the central spacer out from the wheel. So I can now measure the outer diameter of that bearing. Also look for any markings on it as well. Yes, there are some markings on it. Need some more light. Okay, so the number I read on the bearing says 6202, which a Google tells me is 35mm outer, and that 35mm is correct. So that is a 35mm outer, and I need a 12mm inner. Don't know if I can find that anywhere though. It seems to be a non-standard size. Right, let me keep looking. There we go, 12 times 35, £6 each. Right, I'll get a couple of those on order. God for that. So there's the first look of it with its correct rims in place. So 21 inch on the front. Obviously the bearings are completely wrong, we know that, but that's just sat there for hold the front end of the bike off the ground, quite frankly. But on the back there is the style wheel I am after, and it's just sat there. It's obviously not touching anything, it's got no spaces in it yet, but the lineup looks absolutely perfect. That looks to be right down smacky in the centre of the frame, and the front sprocket, the rear sprocket seems to line up with the front sprocket. Oh, God for that. So I need to get some tyres. I want some traditional old style knobbly, sort of square knobbly 18 inch rear tyre, and I want a matching sort of traditional square knobbly 21 inch front. So I don't want that style, that's too modern, too aggressive. I want something more in keeping with like a 60s, 70s trial bike. Okay, well, disaster on the front, at least for another week. But the back, that looks like a success. So let me start trying to work out exactly what size spacers I need and how I'm going to create them. Because if I can get the spacer created for the left, I can put the brake in, then I can measure the remaining space for the spacer on the right. Yeah, movement forward. Okay, let me just give that more careful thought for a while. So I've just measured best way I can what spacer I think I need on the left hand side here at the back. And the best way I can think to put that into to test it is to make up a temporary spacer. Now what I have over here is an old contraption I've had for many years, can't remember the last time I used it, which should, because it keeps the blade square, allow me to cut a straight edge, which if you're anything like me, I struggle to do with a hacksaw. So I'm just going to try and cut this little temporary spacer here. It's just out a bit of chromium tube. It's definitely not permanent, it's just to make sure I've got the width correct, then I can get it, you know, cut appropriately by someone who knows what they're doing. But this little contraption here, it will keep the blade straight. I've measured out the 25.8 mil. I say 25.8. Who am I kidding? I've measured out the very best I possibly can with a steel rule.
That to me looks within the tolerances I can work at, but that will give me an idea. So if that's right, then I know I'm in the right ballpark. So let's see if this can cut that, and let's see if I can come up with a temporary spacer that will do the job. That was not easy. Let's see what result I got.
Could I help you with anything?
In a moment, son. Better than I could have done without the jig. So you'll see I made a couple of different spacers. First one was 25mm, second one was 28. And I'm just trying those in the wheel itself. And what I've done is I've levelled the bike up so it's perfectly horizontal, and then I've just dropped a plumb line down so I can see whether that's on the middle of the wheel or not. So let's put it in with the 28mm spacer and see if that now fits. Right, let me try and explain what I've been playing at here. So the bike is level, you can see that on the spirit level. The piece of string is exactly halfway between those 2 points. That's at 10 centimeters in, and the total width is 20 centimeters. So the plumb line is coming down, and you can see that is in line with the center of that wheel. So that wheel is now central. The sprocket is in a comfortable position, but when I've checked the alignment, what I've found is that the inside of this sprocket is in line with the outside of this sprocket. But that's not an issue, because I can buy an offset front sprocket that will move it out and compensate. That's my plan. Keep the 28mm rear spacer, the wheel central, the sprocket's okay, and I can move the front sprocket out. I need to measure it exactly, but I think it's by about 6mm further that way. Might mean I need to clear the casing, but I'm not worried about that. I think we have a winner. There you go. There's spacers both sides. You know, they're not the final spacers, they are just in place to prove a point. They're not the right material, but that is a 28mm spacer on the sprocket side and a 13mm spacer on the brake side, and that wheel is bang smack in the middle and spinning nicely. That will do the bloody job. So I just need to get the right material now, cut to that size, and I think me's got myself a rear wheel. That feels good. That feels proper good. Never done anything like that before, but I feel like I'm actually achieving something. No doubt I'm not, no doubt I'm doing it wrong. You know, feedback will be received well, but yeah, I think I'm getting somewhere. There you go, final mock-up. That is all in place. Got the 28mm there. I've got the 8mm inside the rear drum. I've got the 13mm here. It's all tightened up. It's spinning and it's in line. That is it. That was my proof of concept. That has been successful. That wheel is in. Yeah, so I just need to get those spacers made up properly to those dimensions, And then the final thing I need to do then, as I said, is just buy an offset front sprocket, just with about 7mm offset at the front, which I know I can buy. Well, at least I've seen them online. So that is it. That is going to be the final dimensions. Ah. Well, I'm chuffed. I spent hours and hours on that today. And I must say, this little contraption here of cutting them worked really quite well. I mean, it certainly got me to within about 1mm of what I was aiming for, and square. So that worked very, very well. Although it was only on thin tubing, as you can see, it's only sort of that thickness. So nowhere near strong enough to be the final spacers, but perfectly good enough for mocking up. Well, look, that is me well and truly out of time for this weekend. I think I'm making the right moves in the right direction, and I've certainly achieved something that I had no idea how to actually address or how to try and tackle it. So I massively thank the help and support that you have given me throughout this build so far, and my channel since I started. I am really close now to hitting that 1,000 subscribers, and if I can do that, that will just unlock the ability for me to communicate with you more, share more, do more. So if you have been watching this and you haven't clicked that subscribe button, I would just request consider it. Completely free, and if I can get over that 1,000, it will be a monumentous occasion for me. So thank you very much. That's all for now, and I'll see you all next week.